He's been the most divisive, nasty, negative campaigner that this country's ever seen.
Today, Priebus is the White House Chief of Staff, and the Democratic National Committee, it's trying to put itself back together with a series of cross-country listening tours as it prepares to select a new chair. Evan McMorris Santoro went to Detroit to meet the candidates.
The next chair of the Democratic National Committee will be in charge of creating a presidential nominating process Democrats can believe in after the bumpy 2016 primary.
Well, I'm running for DNC chair. We're going to be up
on the campus of Wayne State University. Democrats literally talked for hours about how to fix their party.
What was it about our message that didn't resonate with you?
Outside rooms like these, progressives have already moved on to trying to defeat Trump.
Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what
The grassroots has found its tactic. Large, loud protests aimed at Trump and millions of dollars raised for activist organizations.
Keith Ellison.
Not in the crowd of the Women's March, the frontrunners for the next chair of the Democratic National Committee. They were in Florida at a high-dollar fundraiser.
Tom Perez.
Tom Perez is the favorite to be the next DNC chair. He admits missing the Women's March was a bad look.
First thing I said at that forum was, I wish we were all in Washington because this forum was really ill-timed. And it was kind of tone-deaf, quite frankly.
They're talking about fighting Trump more directly and, the civil actions of their own and building grassroots efforts. Don't Democrats need to be a part of those conversations?
Well, we are part of those conversations, and we need to be an even greater part of those conversations. That's exactly what we're doing now.
The people who actually choose the party chair are mostly establishment party officials, and their resistance to change is as predictable as the base's call to change party rules after a rough election. The next DNC chair needs to bring those sides together after one of the roughest elections in Democratic Party history. I asked the candidates for DNC chair about how to make the party relevant again to angry progressives. Keith Ellison is the guy Bernie Sanders wants to run the DNC.
Is there enough interest in change among the old guard to satisfy the people who are at that Women's March?
There are enough people who are new, because there are many, and there's enough people who have been around for a while who want change to make the change. If they're willing to just recognize that we have lost about as bad as any party can lose.
Despite his change mandate, Ellison has been broadly supportive of things like caucuses, a tradition progressives want replaced with straight primary voting.
This is the pivotal week where we are demonstrating that we're getting over the top.
Pete Buttigieg is the millennial, openly gay mayor of South Bend, Indiana.
Hey, how are you?
Pete attended the South Bend version of the Women's March and has made physically attending progressive protests a big part of his campaign for chair.
What we've got to recognize is we've got a lot of allies. I mean, take the airport protests, all because a woman who I don't think is even 25 years old got on Facebook and organized something 2 or 3 hours prior. We were responding to her. That's not a bad thing. That's actually a really good thing. Democratic Party's got its job, which has to do with running campaigns and winning elections. But the broader movement, the broader resistance, that's bigger than anything that you can command out of DNC headquarters.
Jahmoo Green is not a frontrunner. She quit her job as a Democratic commentator on Fox to run for DNC chair. She wants sweeping change.
That's going to mean restructuring and reimagining our processes. It means getting rid of superdelegates. It means saying that no longer can we be the party that embraces caucuses, that disenfranchise the elderly and senior citizens and the disabled and single parents, that we actually start as a party to walk our values.
It's a super delicate balance, though. This idea that you hear on the streets of a Democratic Tea Party. Do you want a Democratic Tea Party? The Democrats need a Tea Party?
Look, we need something that is certainly more inspiring than the Tea Party and more connected to actually creating real progress.
President Trump sent a tweet this morning bashing Nordstrom for dropping his daughter's merchandise. Trump likes to tweet about public companies, and recently he singled out General Motors, Toyota, Ford, and Boeing. These tweets can have a big impact on stocks. even if it's sometimes just temporary. That's because when the president talks about an individual company, stock trading algorithms start buying or selling its stock instantly. When Trump tweeted about Lockheed Martin in December, these trader bots recognized the words "out of control" as criticism and began to dump shares within milliseconds. Human traders followed the software's lead. Lockheed's stock plunged. By 4 p.m., it had lost almost $4 billion. That's $29 million per character tweeted. But the Trump effect is hardly scientific. Nordstrom stock actually jumped 4% in trading today, even though Trump now can, and does, retweet his digs against companies on the official POTUS account. In the days after the Trump administration imposed a temporary ban on Syrian refugees coming to America, the Prime Minister of Canada announced that his country would be happy to take them in. But Canadian generosity is more than a government initiative. In the city of Guelph, Ontario, one man is going to extraordinary lengths to help people resettle.
Morning, Abdu. How are you? Morning, Feta. Morning, Rezwan. Morning, Seema. How are you? Excellent. Good morning.
Jim Estill is the CEO of Danby, an Ontario-based company that makes refrigerators and other home appliances. It did $400 million in sales last year. There are 150 people who work at Danby's warehouse in Guelph, and 16 of them are Syrian refugees. Estill has put aside $1.5 million to sponsor 58 Syrian families. He covers their rent, food, and living expenses for a year as they settle into their new lives. And if they need a job, he offers them one at Danby. The pay starts at $12 an hour. Will you tell me how this whole program got started?
One of my mantras I always say is do the right thing. And that's actually a good way to run a business. So I tell all my staff at Danby, do the right thing. How do you treat your coworkers? Well, you treat them well. You do the right thing. How do you treat your customers? Do the right thing.
Estill's a numbers guy. He wakes up every morning at 6 a.m. and carries out a series of rituals throughout the day, tracking his steps on a wrist monitor, pre-work push-ups. So when he saw the refugee crisis unfolding in the Middle East last year, he applied the same kind of methodical precision to that problem.
But you can't really go and say, you know, we do the right thing and, oh, this thing's happening across the road and we're just not going to do anything. I didn't actually think it was a big deal. Guelph has a population of 120,000. To bring in 50 families, maybe 250, 300 people, that's very absorbable.
It was a logic-based approach to a problem that has recently been characterized by ugliness and fear. America is closing its doors out of worries of terrorism. Europe is struggling under the weight of a refugee influx. For now, Canada is holding firm. It's letting in 25,000 refugees this year.
Okay, so I'd like to get this started. First part of the presentation. Next meeting's February 13th.
Estill took in his first refugee last January. He goes through stacks of emailed pleas to choose who to invite, and then, after a government security check, helps organize English classes and a welcoming committee. He's one of hundreds of Canadians who have volunteered to privately sponsor Syrians. It's a system that places a lot of burden and a lot of power with the volunteer host. But is there an incentive for you to take people who could actually benefit you in the business and then to sort of cast aside people who wouldn't be able to work or wouldn't be interested in working?
Oh, yes, there is an incentive to bring in people that are whatever I want to bring in. But the key is it's a free country. You don't have to work here. And you're not indentured when you come in.
Ahmed Abed has been at Danby since November. So tell me, when did you leave Homs?
1240.
2014?
Yeah.
What did you do for work before the war?
I have a small factory for clothes, making clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For how many years were you doing that?
I mean, like 25 years.
25 years?
Yeah.
What's happened to the factory, do you know?
Everything is gone.
It's gone?
Yeah. I mean, my house, my brother's house, all the family, I mean, the area, all area is go down.
Yeah. So
yeah, destroyed.
Do you imagine going back there ever?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
What did you think when you met Jim the first time?
I I don't believe this guy. I mean, he do this. Even I don't know him in my life, but he's a great man.
Rula drives CMAS.
Do you get pushback from people for doing this?
I do get some pushback from people doing it, yes.
In what way?
Well, the most obvious is there is some xenophobic people who think I'm bringing in terrorists, and so I get a little bit of that. I don't get as much of that in Canada as I do from the Americans.
Are you worried that if there were a terrorist attack, this would become harder to do?
Of course I worry about that. I worry about that. But the people that we're helping are the people that fear the same terrorists that we fear.
Because you think it would make the program harder to do? Or
it would make the program harder to do, and it would make more people turn against the program. That is the concern. But not if people think rationally about it.
Today, Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo became president of Somalia in the country's first legitimate election in 48 years. The election was a milestone for Somalia, but in a nation plagued by clan conflict, corruption, and the rise of the Islamic extremist group Al-Shabaab, holding secure and truly democratic voting proved to be nearly impossible. After a recent wave of Al-Shabaab attacks in Mogadishu, authorities moved the voting to the heavily guarded international airport. They banned vehicles from the city, closed schools, and imposed a no-fly zone. The security threat also forced the government and its Western backers to scrap a plan to give each citizen a vote. Instead, 135 tribal elders were selected to nominate 14,000 regional delegates, who would in turn vote for members of the House of the People and the Upper House of Parliament. Those newly elected officials would then vote for the president. And even that process was riven by fierce tribal disputes, corruption, and reports of intimidation. But the results were hailed as significant progress.
This parliament is more legitimate and representative than any since the last elections were held in 1969. Terrorists have been unable to derail the electoral process.
Finally, after a months-long 21-way race, those delegates chose Farmajo. But it's unclear whether Somalia's new leader was chosen freely, even by semi-democratic standards. Watchdogs say bribery was unprecedented in scale. Rival presidential candidates have accused each other of buying votes, and Middle Eastern powers eager to extend their influence in a strategically important region are suspected of funding the campaigns of specific candidates. But Farmajo took the oath today in a smooth and immediate transfer of power. He's the former Prime Minister of Somalia and holds dual citizenship in the U.S., the sort of westernized moderate that American interests had been hoping would take power in Somalia for decades. But now that the Trump administration has listed Somalia in its travel ban, many fear that it could also slash a $196 million aid package planned for 2017, effectively defunding the country's ability to fight terrorism and putting President Farmajo in a treacherous position. Chinese students have been attending American colleges and graduate schools in big numbers for years. And now, the allure of access to some of the world's best universities has Chinese parents sending their kids to the States even earlier, for high school.
Dong Chanyan, who goes by Emma, attends Pius XI Catholic High School in Milwaukee. The 19-year-old senior is taking AP classes in the morning and rehearsing for a school play in the afternoon.
You don't wish to work in this house anymore?
Emma's from Guangzhou, a city northwest of Hong Kong. She came from her high school in China to study in the US 2.5 years ago.
Tell me some of your favorite things about studying in America.
First thing is I can choose what I want to study. In China, it's like we don't choose. Like people tell you what class you're going to take. I took acting 1B, and they taught me to warm up with like a banana dance.
What's the banana dance? Show me in the way then, come on. Would you have ever done that in China or high school?
No.
No?
No. You will be treated as a psychopath.
More and more Chinese parents are sending their kids to study in the States even before they get to college.
What's your plan? The plan is I want to go to college in here. Mostly my dad's friends suggest him that it's better for me to come here as high school because I can get used to the culture, I can get used to the language.
What do you want to do when you graduate?
I want to be a doctor, but it might change. I'm a high schooler so far, so who knows?
Emma's one of 68 teenagers from China who are attending Pius this year, and they're part of a growing national trend. In 2016, nearly 50,000 Chinese nationals received visas to attend high schools in the United States. That's 100 times more than in 2004, and makes Chinese students the largest group of international students by far. Demand is so great that this former Days Inn hotel has been turned into a full-service dorm for Chinese kids. The Wisconsin International Academy, or WIA, is the brainchild of Jian Sun, a former scientist turned businessman. And it's where Emma lives with 170 other high schoolers from China.
Attention WIA students, if you would like to pick up your package, now is the best time.
Kids eat, sleep, and study here. WIA is home, and it isn't cheap.
So it's $40,000 to $50,000 a year for a student.
For students, covers for tuitions at their high school and a yellow program and services, food, transportation, everything is included.
So these parents are typically very successful, they're relatively wealthy. What are they hoping to gain?
Well, some family want their kids to get to the best college they can get into. Okay, they are talking about ranking top 50 or top 100. Some family want to make sure their kids are capable to take their family business over when they're done here in the college.
In many schools, art is...
Jian Sun isn't the only one financially benefiting from kids coming to the US from China. 5 private high schools in the area take kids from WIA, like Melinda Scrady. She's the president of Pius, where Emma goes, and has been partnering with WIA for the last 5 years.
There's just so many really neat kids in this class. Here she is.
Chinese students at Pius pay a $4,000 premium on top of the regular $12,000 tuition that American kids pay. Scrady says it's to cover extra services, like additional language instruction.
These students that are coming from China are paying full whack when it comes to tuition. How does that help actually as a resource to students that are already here that perhaps couldn't necessarily afford to come here?
There will be children that won't be able to afford an art trip, and there will be people that can't go on retreat. Because the total collected budget affords those opportunities for every student, having the premium tuition, having the full paid tuition, we've been really fortunate that all programs have continued to be enhanced.
Enrollment at Catholic and some other private schools has been declining. But American boarding schools have been able to keep their enrollment numbers up by admitting more international students. More Chinese students means more business for Jian Sun, who plans to expand his WIA model.
One of our missions really community engagement. And
When we visited him last month, a delegation of 6 private schools from Cleveland toured Jian's facilities to learn more about WIA.
What are your hopes for growth for this year, next year, and beyond?
This year, we're looking at develop the program in Iowa. And other than just high schools, we are extending our program to 7th and 8th grade.
By the time Jian Sun expands his program, Emma will have graduated from high school. She hopes to attend Boston University, but before she heads off to college, she's going to China for the summer. It's the only time she gets to spend with her family.
Good evening.
That's Vice News Tonight for Wednesday, February 8th.